Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're stepping into a dark fantasy legend. We're entering a world caught in a perpetual twilight, a place where the traditional, heroic archetype of the bard has been tragically, completely subverted. I'll be your guide through the anatomy of a dying empire and the horrific melodies that echo through its ruins.
You know, there's a saying, in a world drowning in ash, the bard is a scavenger of misery. And that really perfectly sets the stage for the legend we're exploring today. In this destroyed empire, our journey isn't about saving the light anymore. That battle, it was lost a long time ago. Now, we're merely witnessing the inevitable dark. The bard is no longer that cheerful hero singing in a crowded tavern. They're a survivor, just picking through the emotional wreckage of the damned.
Okay, let's dive right into Act 1 of our tragedy, Descent into Whale's Belly, the Graveyard of Empires. Picture this, spatial and spiritual descent into the dark. We start in the years past, walking way beyond the gray roads, leaving any trace of civilization far behind us. As we enter the present twilight, we find ourselves deep in the blood-soaked trenches. Approaching the final hour, we are standing in a literal graveyard of empires. And ultimately, this path, which is quite literally paved with the shattered teeth of martyrs, leads us into eternity, the belly of the beast. So what exactly is this inescapable place? It's known as the whale's belly. Imagine it for a second. Endless, blood-soaked trenches where the very air is thick with the inescapable scent of decay. Really let that atmospheric dread sink in. This desolate battlefield, this graveyard, this is what the bard now calls home. It is a place of absolute finality. And out here, a stark, brutal realization hits you. Hope is a useless commodity. Oh sure, the grim dark bard might still flash a charming smile and sell hope to the desperate, but they know the terrible truth underneath it all. In a completely broken world, hope is the most expensive and ultimately the absolute most useless thing you can possess.
Which brings us to Act 2, The Scavenger of Misery, a masterpiece woven from death.
If hope is totally gone, what does the bard actually create? Well, there's this chilling contrast between the horrifying materials they use and the art that comes out of it. Step 1. The process begins by seeking the melody hidden in a soldier's final rattle, literally harvesting the dying breaths of forgotten kings. Step 2. The bard then plays a viol strung with the actual gut of traitors. Step 3. From these vile components, they weave a haunting sonata of grief. And finally, this song doesn't bring a magical boon of life. It just grants the survivors the heavy truth of human cruelty, giving them the only mercy left, the strength to somehow endure the unendurable. You see, the magic of the grimdark bard is completely inverted. They don't praise victors. They harvest tales of agony, thriving on the raw, unfiltered emotion of the dying. This magic isn't some flamboyant, heroic display of light. It's a whispered lie. It might manifest as the sudden screech of a flute, intentionally blown just to shatter a foe's mind, or a dark lullaby that leads innocent souls straight into the void. And terrifyingly, that same sonata of despair can be used to bolster a desperate, doomed charge.
Let's move into Act 3, a masterpiece of grief, the echoes of a broken empire.
Here we reach a profound, tragic realization regarding the bard's ultimate purpose in this endless graveyard. This state is absolute atonement. And speaking as a weary narrator who has walked these gray roads, atonement here isn't about seeking forgiveness, not at all. It's the crushing realization that the bard is no longer the hero. They are merely a ghost of the story, just a hollowed-out vessel meant to ensure that the world's agony never, ever falls silent. And this brilliantly illustrates the tragic shift at the very core of our legend. Think about it. The traditional bard was a chronicler of historical truth, right? Bringing hope and life to the people. But the grimdark bard has been totally stripped of their agency. They're reduced to a vessel for echoes, a scavenger of misery. The chronicler of life has been subjugated into a mere recorder of death. But of course, every dark legend needs an antagonist. Act 4 introduces the architect of lies, dominance through grief. Enter the Shadow Bard, watching silently from the mists. Right as the grimdark bard reaches their state of tragic atonement, playing their masterpiece of grief, the architect of lies makes his move. Watching from those mists, the Shadow Bard sees this masterpiece not as art, but as a tool for dominance. He sees his total control of the narrative the exact moment the bard surrenders to it.
Which leads us into our final act, weaponizing the twisted word, propaganda in the twilight.
This is where the historical truth once upheld by the traditional bard is completely undermined. The shadow bard employs what is known as the twisted word. He takes that masterpiece of grief and entirely rewrites it. Using profound gaslighting and propaganda, tactics we sadly recognize all too well even outside of legends, the architect manipulates the raw grief of the survivors. He actually convinces them that their miserable existence in the trenches is a blessing of his own making.
Consider the real-world consequences of this dark magic. These aren't just abstract literary devices, folks. They are concrete, devastating weapons of control over the survivors trapped in the graveyard. Historical truth is entirely undermined. The new narrative is crafted specifically to justify the terrifying decline of their world. The bard remains the lone chronicler of the end, but their story is stolen. It becomes a literal weapon wielded by the architect.
Listen to this. A fabricated story is the most powerful tool for maintaining total control. Let that absolute bleakness sink in for a moment. The greatest weapon in this destroyed world isn't a sword. It isn't a spell. It is a twisted narrative that makes the victims worship their own suffering.
Which leaves us with this haunting final thought as we close out this explainer. If the traditional bard is gone and the grimdark bard's masterpiece of grief has been twisted into a weapon of propaganda by the architect of lies, who is left to remember the truth? It's a chilling question to leave you with, one that echoes forever in the whale's belly. Thank you so much for joining me on this descent, and I'll see you in the next explainer.